Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, caste discrimination caught on tape in India. But is it enough to end a 2,000-year-old practice? Anushay Hossain is back, filling in as digital producer. Anushay, talking about caste can be a sensitive issue, and it seems that is the case on Twitter today, too.
Yes, Lisa, our online community is extremely divided over this issue, and many people are asking if the caste system is still even relevant today. So I'm going to be pulling up your tweets throughout the show. If you at home want to join us, our online community, please tweet me using the hashtag AJStream.
And joining us at the table is Anupama Rao, author of The Caste Question. She is also a professor at Columbia's Barnard College and is working on a new book on caste called Dalit Bombay. And it's Anupama Rao. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Of course, there are many ways for you to be part of the stream community, and one of those is Pinterest, where you can follow the stream and see what's catching our eye, including additional content related to today's topic. It's just one more way that you can be in the stream.
Hi, my name is Meera Karunanandan. I work for the Blue Planet Project to promote water as a human right and a commons, and I'm in the stream.
Caste discrimination was banned by India's constitution more than 60 years ago. Yet the ancient practice continues to create a class of untouchables, or Dalits as they're known. Take a look at this clip from India Untouched.
अंदर नहीं आओ आ छोकरा केम बाहर अंदर केम नहीं आता
नो आवे
तुम अंदर केम नहीं आता आ घर कौन है आ मासी नाम से रमेश तू क्या कोड़ी छो रमेश भरवाड़ बद्दा भरवाड़ छो तू પણ તમારે ઘરે આવ્યા લોકો કેમ
આવે ખરા પણ અંદર ઘરમાં ને બહાર
તને કોણે કીધું એવું કે તમે અભડાઈ જાવ એમ
ખબર પડી ગઈ ના
તમારી રીતના ખભા ઉપર હાથ મૂકીને ઉભા રહો આ લોકો સાથે
હા ના
કેમ
અભડાઈ લા અભડશિયાટ સે ઈદ મન નહીં કરે અભડશિયાટ એટલે હું.
The government has enacted affirmative action programs known as the reservation system to lift those in officially recognized groups called scheduled castes or other backward castes out of poverty. But some disagree with it.
This caste has absolutely no part in giving seats, etc. It's very unfair.
Lower caste ને અન્યાય થવા જેવો સવાલ હોતો નથી. લોઅર કાસ્ટને અન્યાય થશે તો લોઅર કાસ્ટ આગળ આવીને કહેવાની જ છે. જેમ આપણે અન્યાય થશે તો આપણે આગળ આવીને કહીએ છીએ. એમને અન્યાય થશે તો એ લોકો આગળ આવીને કહેશે.
હવે આ સમાજમાં તો એવું રહ્યું જ નથી ને. હાલના સંજોગોમાં ક્યાં એવું રહ્યું છે? ત્યાંના સમાજમાં એવું છે જ નહીં કે લોકોની સાથે આપણે દુર્વ્યવહાર કરી રહ્યા છીએ કે સરકાર કરી રહી છે. એવું છે જ નહીં ને. સમય બદલાઈ ગયો છે ને.
Why economic status is not given importance and why caste system is being given importance. Whenever you ask any political leader, he will say, "No, yaar, it should always be on a caste system." But we say, why are you dividing us on caste system?
અને એ લોકોમાં હોશિયારી તો બી આગળ આવી શકે છે. એના માટે એ લોકોને કઈ વધારે ટકા અનામત આપવા કે કોઈ જરૂરી જ નથી એમ. હવે સવર્ણોને અન્યાય થઈ રહ્યો છે. ઊંચી કાસ્ટના લોકોને અન્યાય થઈ રહ્યો છે.
Activists say those who oppose reservation are from higher castes and haven't felt the same long-term impact of this centuries-old discriminatory system. They want government to enforce existing laws against caste discrimination. To raise awareness and create public pressure, they're recording instances of caste discrimination. Here's a clip from Video Volunteers India.
ये काम क्यों कर रहे हैं?
પેટ કે ચંદા કર રહે हैं.
बीमारी हमारी घमौड़ी होता है, खुजली उजली सब हो जाता है इसी से. दूसरा काम मिले तो करेंगे क्योंकि एकदम गंदा काम है, महकता है, पूरा बदबू देता है. काम करने के लिए आत्मा नहीं करता है.
So what's the best way to deal with this challenge? Joining us via Skype from Goa is Stalin K, an activist and filmmaker. He's also the manager of Video Volunteers India. And from New Delhi, Jitain Jain, General Secretary of Youth for Equality, an organization that opposes the reservation system. Welcome to both of you. Stalin, I want to start with you. You had a last name, but then you changed it to just the letter K. Why'd you do that?
Well, most Indian last names, which we call surnames, denote caste in this country, most of it. And since I don't believe in the system of caste, I decided to drop it and don't use it anymore.
And how has that changed things for you, or has it changed things for you?
Not much. I mean, it's just a name. There are in some circles, people don't really bother to ask you what your caste is, but in some circles, people still do. If I was up for marriage in the arranged marriage market, I'm surely caste would be the first thing that people would want to know of me.
Anupama, in simple terms, explain what the caste system is and then how it's still relevant today.
Well, caste is a complex form of inequality. It functions as a legal identity today because there is indeed, as you've mentioned, a schedule that names untouchable communities and untouchable castes across India. Caste also functions as an occupational hierarchy. It has typically and traditionally decided what kinds of jobs you perform and what you have access to in terms of employment. It has functioned as a model of educational exclusion. Caste is also regulated, I think, as Stalin mentioned, through these two main forms of social intimacy. One is what we tend to call commensality, or who you choose to eat with, who you actually practice social relations with. And the other important one is who you choose to marry and who you choose to have sexual intercourse with. So caste is also regulated by a sexual order that decides who you can marry and indeed regulates it quite critically.
I want to pick up on that theme of hierarchy that you just mentioned. I have a tweet here from Nes Kurosawa. She says, Dalit capitalism and entrepreneurship have managed to create a prosperous new elite bypassing the needs of India's lowest castes. I also have a tweet here from Bale Sogoni. Says, caste system in Indian community is so entrenched, even the victims feel they will be cursed and they are born to serve to the superior caste. So would you say that instead of actually getting better, the system almost seems to be increasingly getting more entrenched?
I wouldn't say that. I think what I would say is that caste itself is changing because caste is integrally important and imbricated in broader social processes. And so what we have happening today is a transformation, and this is something that has been happening over the last century to a century and a half. We have caste actually morphing from what used to be a system of ritual and religious exclusion, if you will, to something that is taking a socioeconomic form. That is, it is in many ways becoming class-like, but there are other aspects of caste which have to do with issues of dignity, of self-respect, and indeed of recognition. And so caste is operating on both of these axes today. And so what we're seeing, again, is a multi-pronged response to the question of caste inequality. There are people indeed who are using access to the market as a way of bypassing the state. And I think, that is something we need to think about very critically, and we can talk about that later. The second is the extraordinary manner in which India's system of affirmative action, together with universal franchise, has actually enabled what people have called a silent revolution of the lower castes and Dalits. And then it seems to me you also have a social revolution that's taking place, which has to do with ways of forefronting Dalit identity, using forms of literature and so forth as a way of raising the question of dignity and self-respect.
Jitain, Anupama just mentioned the affirmative action or the reservation program. You believe that the reservation program is politically motivated and divisive. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I completely agree with her. Reservation is the most divisive policy in India, and trust me, if you look at the past track record of last 50 years in India, this reservations have become a tool of exploitation of our caste system, which is prevalent in India. I mean, politicians are exploiting the caste system in India to get power and get to the government. I mean, they promise reservations to the people just because they want to get votes. And it is like it has sort of become a political corruption in India, that you promise them reservation and you get their votes. And instead of solving the problem of caste, I think it has worsened the problem, because when we got the independence, there were around 16 castes which were backward, and they were given reservation for 10 years. But now, 70 years after independence, almost 70 years or 60 years, I would say, the caste problem remains as it is. The reservations have gone folds and folds, and the number of backward castes in India have increased to 6,000 for 1600. So instead of solving the caste, the reservations have perpetuated the caste, and I think it is the most divisive policy. And if you talk about affirmative action, I think the point of view of Youth for Equality is that reservations are not affirmative action, and even if they are, I think they are the worst form of affirmative action, because affirmative action is given a person to, I mean, if the affirmative action is given, it is given to uplift the standard of a person. But if you give reservation, you're actually destroying the competence of a person. You are actually giving him a surety that whether he works hard or not, he's going to get something which is already there. He's going to take things for granted.
Okay.
And it's worsening the problem. For example.
Okay, so like you believe that it's worsening the problem. I'm curious what Stalin K thinks. Stalin, do you think that the reservation system is working? Is it pulling people out of poverty? Is it helping to end this discrimination?
Affirmative action definitely is working, and one of the signs or the proof that it is working is the fact that there are more and more people opposing it. You see, there is what Jiten seems to be arguing here is against reservation. One has to remember that this country has had reservation for about 2,500 years for a certain caste of people, the privileged castes, and it is these castes that are used to appropriating every resources that is known to us, whether it be land, whether it be economy, whether it be means of production. It is only in the last 65 years or so that we are trying to make a platform for those who were not so equal. So I think, and also the reservations, as from the caste point of view, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're required to provide for affirmative actions, positive discriminations for those who have historically been underprivileged and kept off the race. On the other hand, if you do that, you are perpetuating the caste identity, and that is a bind. But to say that this is a divisive politics, and to say that this is merely only about vote banks, is to simplify a very complex issue of undying caste. I mean, if you are really interested in destroying untouchability and therefore destroying the affirmative actions or taking off the affirmative action, then one has to go to the root cause, which is the custom itself. I don't think organizations like Youth for Equality is doing anything about and highlighting the destroying the very caste system itself. I think that's where the problem is. We should get rid of the system itself.
I want to quickly go to our online community here for a second. Sorry, Jiten. I'm going to quickly take a question from our online community. Stalin, I want to pose this question to you. It picks up on the theme you were just mentioning about the reservations. Let's have a quick listen.
Hi, my name is Samir Khan. I'm speaking from Pune, India. The reservation policy has indeed helped Dalits to improve their situation in the last 60 years to some extent. But those Dalits who convert to other religions do not enjoy the same reservation privileges. I think this rule has to change so that those Dalits who convert should also benefit this policy.
What would you have to say about that, Stalin? Would you agree?
I would agree, because as my film India Untouched shows very clearly that for a lot of communities who have converted their religion into Islam or Christianity or Buddhist or any other religion, to escape the clutches of the caste discrimination have in fact not been able to do so. Caste discrimination continues within the other religions as well. So if that is the case, then it logically extends that one has to also look at giving some sort of advantages to the people in these races.
So Anupama, caste is so culturally ingrained in India. How is anti-caste thought and those who promote it, how is that received societally in India?
Great. Let me respond to that also by taking on a couple of issues that came up with Jiten's points as well as with Stalin's. So one is really, what is affirmative action meant to do? What is it addressing, and what is the larger project in aid of? One is, of course, the question of historic wrongs and righting historic wrongs. The second issue, and one I think I'd like our larger group of followers here on the stream to note is that affirmative action policies in India, unlike many other places, have actually targeted the numerical majority. They have targeted the demographic majority. And so in that sense, the understanding behind affirmative action policies in India is that there is a majority that has actually been suffering the brunt of caste discrimination. That, I think, actually profoundly alters the way that we tend to think about reservations itself. So one of the issues that has come forth by people like Youth for Equality and others is that you are creating a system that divides those who have merit, who are meritorious, from those who get in because of reservations. If you think about the fact that this is a profoundly unequal system where over 3/4 of the population has been denied access and entry into jobs, employment, and so forth, then you have to think about the project of affirmative action as being in aid of a majority and not a minority. So those are sort of two issues, and this is indeed something that the anti-caste thinkers that you mentioned brought up. B.R. Ambedkar is a very important one. He is somebody who is associated with being the architect of India's constitution. He's a major constitutional lawyer, himself a Dalit leader. And what Ambedkar himself did in putting forward a project of social justice and affirmative action is to claim that caste could not, as a form of social inequality, be done away with just political rights.
Well, and that was brought out so clearly in Stalin K's documentary film. Jiten, I'm curious. I know that you and your group advocate for getting rid of the caste system entirely, but given its history and how ingrained culturally it is that possible?
Well, I want to ask a question to all my respected fellow panelists that for historical injustices what they're talking about, let me ask a question. I mean, are you going to punish the current generations and future generations for the injustices, the historical injustices which happened thousands of years ago? Are you going to punish us? I mean, from last 50 years since India got independence, the casteism, please don't interrupt, sir. The casteism, the untouchability has been declared unconstitutional, illegal, and the problem of untouchability has already been solved, and that was the only reason why the reservations were given. I think the problem has been solved. Now, so far as the point the Stalin raised about the doing away with the caste, I am in complete agreement with him that the root cause of all the problem is the caste. And if you abolish caste, you are going to solve this entire problem of casteism and the discrimination. And I agree with him that India, and we have the same view. We have told in the courts also, in the Supreme Court, that Indian government should ban the caste. Just do away with the system of caste, so this problem is solved forever. But here our politicians are not interested in solving the problem. They don't want to solve the problem of caste because they want to reap the benefits of caste. They want to perpetuate caste. They want to do the politics of caste. And let me tell you, this casteism is anti-national, is anti-development, it's anti-society.
Right. So,
and India is now standing on the doors of reverse discrimination. The normal people, the people who are general people today, are being discriminated negatively because we belong to the general caste.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Jiten. I want to get a response from Stalin. Stalin, your documentary crossed 8 states, 4 religions, all social classes in India. Is it possible to do away with class based on what you've learned crossing the country?
Well, I'm an optimist, so it is absolutely possible in the long run to do away with this atrocious and very, very violating system of caste. I'm very intrigued with Jiten's comments here. One is, I'm happy to know that Youth for Equality is against caste. So that's full force for you, Jiten, on that. But having said that, to say that untouchability has been abolished merely because it has found a mention in the Article 17 of the Indian Constitution, we'll be fooling ourselves. You need watch videos that our community correspondents have been posting. We have a petition going on with the National Commission for Scheduled Caste, precisely proving the fact that untouchability continues even where you and I are living. I'm talking about cities, not forget of the rural areas. One proof of the fact that untouchability continues and the casteist mind continues in India is to pull up any matrimonial column that gets published every Sunday, 6 to 7 pages in every newspaper. And these all these matrimonial columns, including the online matrimonial sites, are organized by caste. People still marry within their own caste system. What does this signify? This tells us that people are still interested in maintaining the purity of the caste system. Remember that caste system is, after all, a system of hierarchy. Don't interrupt, sir. A system of hierarchy where people are put up and below the other. So intercaste marriages have not been encouraged. The other thing about will the current generation be punished for the misdeeds of the past? I think that's a very warped way of looking at things. One, this is not a punishment. If we are looking at networks and social networks that we create from generations, like you and I can sit and talk on the show because we have the right networks. We know the right people. Why are the three of us talking on the show, and why are not people on the road talking on the show? Because we have better networks, which we have created over generations. The fact is that there are a lot of people who have not been allowed any entry of any opportunity in this country, and continues to be so. So if we are interested in constructing a nation full of able people who have all equal opportunity to play in the field, then yes, less people who were less equal will have to be treated more equally till the time that everybody is equal.
Stalin, I want to interrupt you here for a second and go to our online community. I have a tweet here from M.A. Musaji. He says, unless cultural perspectives and social attitudes change, then you cannot expect a change of any kind in society. I also have a tweet here from Maria Mumtaz. She says, untouchables feel they were born to serve the superiors is a result of internalized oppression, just like gender oppression. And lastly, I have a tweet here from Daniel Vedherten. He says, entrepreneurship built the USA economy power. It can do the same for any country, even India. What would you have to say to that, Jatain? I want to pose that question to you. Would you agree? Is entrepreneurship the way out for India's caste system?
Well, more than that, entrepreneurship, I think the education is the way out. Because I think the original Indian constitution talked about a directive principle which said that the government must educate all the children from the age of 4 years to 16 years free of cost. I mean, from the 0 years to 14 years, it was government's responsibility to educate all the citizens. But in the last 50 years, through the series of amendments, what they have done is that they have said, okay, 0 to 6 years is the responsibility of parents, and from 7 years to 14 years, it is the responsibility of state, but as per their available resources. So the idea of the equalitarian society was lost in those amendments. If you give free education, I mean, let me tell you, our organization Youth for Equality is all for affirmative action. I mean, you give them scholarships, you give them free education, you give them tuitions, you give them all kind of support. We are all for it, but not for reservations, because I mean, reservations are just it's like a drug addiction. If you give reservations to a caste, you give it to one person, you give it to his son, to his grandchildren, you keep giving them forever, then they will never learn to stand up on their own feet. They will never learn to compete. It's like, giving a walking stick to a person and he will never learn to walk. It's like a drug addiction. Once you have the reservations, you never want to leave them. I mean, if you see in the last 2 years, there were riots in the several cities of India. People and the two castes like Gujars and Meenas, they destroyed the government property.
Okay, Jatain, I'm going to have to stop you there because the program is coming to a close. Anupama, Stalin, and Jatain, we are going to continue this conversation in our online post show, which is coming up on stream.aljazeera.com. Now, on Tuesday, The Innocence of Muslims is the title of the anti-Islam film that caused so many to protest. But some argue, what about the innocence of white people? That's tomorrow's topic. Until then, see you online.
About as many things as I thought we would.
Welcome back to the Online Post Show. We're talking about the caste system in India and whether it's something that will ever change. Anupama, it's just incredible when you watch these documentaries and people who are even in the Dalit class, the one that is so discriminated against, so many of them don't even question it. It's just sort of their lot in life. How do you change that? I mean, government can create any law it wants, but how do you change that mindset?
Sure. No, I think this is a fabulous question, because one of the issues is, of course, that you've got a set of very powerful laws on the books, and so you've got the abolition of untouchability, and in fact, some of the things that Stalin has been working on is to make available to people and to publicize some of the other laws against the practices of untouchability and the criminalization of the practice of untouchability that exists on the law books in India. So from 1955 to 1976 and then to 1989, what we have are quite rigorous laws that punish the perpetrators of untouchability. And yet what you see, as you said, in some of the videos, and if you go out and actually speak with people, there is an internalization. The social psychology of caste is something that people accept.
Yeah.
And I think here you have outreach, public outreach, the politicization of Dalits, which has been very effectively done by Dalit communities, by Dalit activists. Legal outreach, where you actually have groups and communities that support victims of caste crime. And this is not something that ends with going and reporting a case. So indeed, what you see are structures of political and bureaucratic corruption that are deeply entrenched. And so police will often not register a case. They will not actually follow up on a proper investigation. You have victims who are courageous enough to report a case who are boycotted. So they suffer a form of, economic and social death because they're thrown out of communities. And so this places the victims of caste violence at persistent risk.
Stalin, I don't want to oversimplify this, but globally, a lot of people view India and the Indian culture as a very polite, respectful people. Is that kind of persona or that kind of actual culture ever going to lend itself to popular uprisings where people in the lower castes really do come together and protest in a way that you might see in Europe or in the United States?
Well, the protest is already on. I mean, there is not one kind of protest, right? There are kinds and kinds of protests, and the protest against caste and caste-based discrimination has started, probably about 200 years back, and way before Dr. B.R. Ambedkar started it as well. What we probably will not hopefully see is a violent sort of protest. And every day I spent with human rights activists, not just Dalit activists, but activists who are trying to look at land issues and land alienation and caste and gender. I'm amazed at how, in spite of all these violations, the protests and the movements against them are largely peaceful. And that, I suppose, has got a lot to do with the way the country is built.
I want to go to our online community here for a second. I have a tweet from Mystery Mania. He says, the caste issues which arise, I feel, are blown out of proportion by the media and politicians. So it's a little ironic that we're discussing this, but what would you say about that, Anupama? Would you agree? Do you think it's exaggerated by the media and politicians for their own gain?
Well, I'd have a twofold response to that. I think media has actually been very powerful in making visible and bringing to public attention instances of caste violence, of exclusion, of gender and sexual violence, of land alienation and so forth, that are happening on an everyday basis across India.
And Anupama, just to put this in context, the person who tweeted that is from the Patel class.
Okay. And so media, I think, can again exercise a twofold function. And in the context of, things such as atrocities against Dalits and so forth, social media and media itself has been extremely powerful, whether it be print or increasingly access to social media, television and so forth. Now, the question of whether politicians are making use of caste, I think one would have to have a twofold response to that. There is indeed the case...
Well, I think his point was that the media and politicians particularly media, blows this out of proportion. This is coming from a guy who's in a very elevated class. So do you think that the media blows this out of proportion?
No, I think in fact, we are reaching the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's been happening on a daily basis so far as political coverage and media attention to this issue. So, for every one case that might be registered in a police station, we've got thousands that either go unreported or are not followed up. That is that, there is no justice at the end of the process.
Jitane, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, let me tell you, even I belong to a minority community. I'm not a Hindu, and my community has been declared backward by the government, and I don't think I'm a backward. That's point number one. And point number two, I completely agree that media is blowing this one-off incidents, this isolated incidents out of proportion. They might make good movies, good shows, and good news, but trust me, the problem is not that big as it is being shown. And point number three, if you talk about violence, the real violence happened in different cities where the communities are fighting to become backward. They are holding the cities for ransom. They are destroying public property, telling the government that if you do not give us a bag, we are going to destroy the city. There is a race to be backward. I don't know where this country is moving forward or when the society is trying to become backward. You are talking about the incidents of discrimination against Dalits. It's reversed here. People are asking government to give them a backward tag so that they can reap the benefits of reservation. They can get free reservations. I think it's reverse discrimination what is going on in India rather than discrimination. I think people want to become backward in India. That's the problem. That's the problem reservation has posed.
I have a tweet here that
is why I think we need to review this policy. We need to look at alternate.
I have a completely different take on whether media is blowing this out of proportion. I wish media was doing much more than what it is doing now. If media was doing what it ought to do, people like us would not create this alternate media, where we are equipping grassroots activists to tell their own stories. The reason why we have to do this is because the media is not telling enough these stories about violations, not just about caste, any sort of ground reality. So I totally disagree with Jitane that this is blown out of proportion. One has to just take a step outside and see the figures. There's at least 3 Dalit women are raped every day in this country. Is that a small figure to talk about? Untouchability practices are rampant, happen at every nook and corner of this country. If you choose to look at it, then you'll find it. If you choose to ignore it, let me give you an example.
Stalin K, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to stop you there because we are out of time. But a huge thank you to all of our guests, Stalin K, Jitane Jain, and Anupama Rao. We do want you to all continue this conversation online. Continue tweeting us your thoughts using the hashtag AJStream. We do want to jump over to Anusha for just a moment, who's got a few other leads we want to fill you in on.
Coded language designed to get around state censorship on China's microblogging site Sina Weibo has reached a whole new level after an abrupt end to a trial of former police chief Wang Lijun. According to Tea Leaf Nation, images are the thing. See this picture of Wang Lijun with a slap mark? It trended and the term slap reached second on the list of Weibo trending terms. One person reacted by saying, "The slap changed China's history and prevented China from heading to another culture revolution." Netizens have gotten creative in retelling the story. Have a look at this one, done in emoticons. You see the police chief at the beginning, later he flees to the US Embassy, and it ends with the trial gavel. Our next lead is from London, where one of the city's iconic black cabs has a new twist. Sharing music created from everyday city sounds like sirens, horns, and talking pedestrians. Sound Taxi was created by artist Yuro Suzuki and headphone maker III. It comes fully equipped with 67 speakers and microphones to take in and mix sound in real time. To hear a relaxing soundtrack from life in London, go to makethecitysoundbetter.com. Lastly, Twitter's Tokyo team launched Lifeline this week. Currently only available in Japan, the feature helps people find life-saving information on natural disasters or moments of crisis by searching their postal code on twitter.com. See something amazing on social media? Tweet it with the hashtag AJStream. We could feature it on the show. Lisa?
All right, thanks, Nusha. On our next show, The Innocence of Muslims. It's the title of an anti-Islam film that caused many to protest. But some argue, what about the innocence of white people? It's a debate you won't want to miss. So tweet us your thoughts on that. Send us your video questions and comments. And until then, we'll see you online.